For 1,000 years, no army could take Constantinople. He was 21 when he broke it. Mehmed the Conqueror. The 29th of May, 1453. For over 1,000 years, no army on earth had ever broken through the walls of Constantinople. Now a young sultan rides in through the shattered stone. Mehmed II is only 21, and the greatest city in the world has finally fallen into his hands. He lays a bare hand on the ancient wall that stopped 100 armies before him, feeling the stone that everyone said could never be broken. Mehmed had sworn for years that he would take this city. Half of his own court once laughed at him behind his back, calling it a boy's impossible dream. Through the ruined streets, the people of the city shrink back against the walls in terror as the conqueror passes slowly by them on foot. In the ash, he lifts the fallen crown of the last emperor, Constantine, whose body was never found in the fighting. After 1,000 years, the Roman Empire ends here. He walks toward Hagia Sophia, the vast dome church that was once the largest building in the entire world, and stops beneath it. But to understand how a young man came to stand here, we have to go back 9 years, to the day a frightened little boy was first made sultan. The year is 1444, and Mehmed is only 12 years old when his father suddenly gives up the throne and drops the whole empire onto him. Enemies are already marching on every border. A great crusader army is moving toward the capital, and now a child is expected to stop it. The old viziers refuse to truly obey a boy. When Mehmed gives a command, gray-bearded men trade looks over his head, and the powerful families quietly move against him. Behind the palace walls, plots are already forming. The boy sits on the most dangerous throne in the world, and at 12 years old he is completely alone. As the crusaders close in, the terrified court begs the old sultan to come back. Murad returns, and Mehmed is forced to step down from his own throne. The boy is pushed aside and made to stand and watch. That day of humiliation will burn inside him for the rest of his life, and he will never forgive it. The year is now 1451. The old Sultan Murad dies, and Mehmed takes the throne a second time, but the frightened boy is gone for good. He returns cold, patient, and merciless. The same court that once mocked him now falls silent as he passes, and every man there lowers his eyes. His very first act as sultan is chilling. To leave no rival alive who could ever challenge him, Mehmed has his own infant half-brother killed. Then he writes the killing into law. From now on, every new sultan is permitted to put his brothers to death for the good of the empire. Now Mehmed turns to the prize no Ottoman before him has ever taken. Night after night he leans over maps of Constantinople and its triple walls for hours. Then he seizes the Bosphorus itself. In just 4 months he throws up a monstrous fortress that chokes the strait and cuts the city off from the sea. The great fortress rises stone by stone above the water, and Mehmed rides through the site himself, driving thousands of workers on without rest. Its cannon now command the strait. Any ship that tries to reach Constantinople must pass under his guns, and the ancient city slowly begins to starve. But those triple walls have never fallen to any assault in 1,000 years. So Mehmed hires a gun founder named Orban, a man the Byzantines had turned away. Orban promises the Sultan a cannon bigger than any ever made. A monster so huge it will take 60 oxen to drag it to the walls. In the roaring foundry, rivers of molten bronze pour into a mold longer than 3 men, lying end to end. Mehmed is casting the weapon that will finally crack open the unbreakable city. April 1453. Mehmed's army finally reaches the city, and a sea of tents and banners spreads across the plain before the ancient triple walls of Constantinople. Then his great gun speaks. A single, monstrous cannon hurls a stone ball into the rampart, and a whole section of wall that stood for 1,000 years bursts apart in dust. Every night, the desperate defenders rebuild by torchlight what his guns smash down by day, filling each breach with earth and timber and barrels. Mehmed throws assault after assault at the walls, and every time they are hurled back. Behind his lines, the young sultan stands over his maps, shaking with fury. The city's harbor is sealed by a great iron chain, and no ship can force it. So Mehmed conceives a plan that sounds insane. He will move his fleet over dry land. Through the night, his men lay a greased wooden road across the hills behind the city, hammering and hauling by torchlight, building a highway for ships where no water runs. Then they drag entire war galleys up the slope on ropes and rollers, whole ships crawling over the hills in the dark, hull by hull, all night long. By dawn, dozens of Mehmed's ships float calmly inside the harbor that was supposed to be untouchable. The defenders stare down in disbelief. The city is now trapped from both sides. On the night of the 28th of May, Mehmed rides along his ranks in the torchlight, and 100,000 men roar as their sultan passes. At dawn, the final assault breaks over the walls. Wave after wave of soldiers rush the ramparts with ladders as the great cannon thunder and the sky lights up. Then a banner goes up over the breach. The defenders break and the attackers pour over the wall at last. After 53 days, the impossible city has fallen. Mehmed rides in through the ruin to Hagia Sophia. He steps down, presses his forehead to the ground, and orders the 1,000-year-old church turned into a mosque that same. The last emperor died somewhere in the fighting, stripped of his royal signs, and his body was never identified. An 1,100-year empire simply ends in the smoke. At 21, Mehmed has done what Islam's greatest warriors dreamed of for 8 centuries. From this day, the world will call him Fatih, the Conqueror. But the young conqueror is only beginning. Mehmed makes the ruined city his own capital and drives it to be rebuilt, filling it with people, markets, and mosques. At court, he becomes utterly feared. When his own Grand Vizier, the man who doubted the siege, displeases him, Mehmed has him executed without a flicker. Year after year, his armies march out. Serbia, Greece, Bosnia, the Crimea. One by one they fall, and the Ottoman Empire swells around the Mediterranean. Twice he is stopped, at Belgrade and by one man in the mountains, Vlad the Impaler, who leaves a forest of stakes to greet Mehmed's own. Even so, almost nothing holds him. Mehmed crushes rival after rival and begins to dream of the ultimate prize, old Rome itself and a single empire spanning 2 continents. In 1480, his troops land in Italy and storm the town of Otranto. All of Christian Europe holds its breath, certain that Rome will be next. He summons a Venetian master, Bellini, to paint his portrait, the cold, hooded stare the world still knows. Mehmed rules like a Roman emperor now. Then, in 1480, he reaches further. His fleet lands in Italy and storms the town of Otranto, and Ottoman banners fly on Italian soil for the first time. The news hits Rome like a thunderclap. They say the Pope himself packs to flee, certain the conqueror means to stable his horses in St. Peter's. In spring 1481, the old Sultan rides out at the head of one more great army, its target kept secret. Many believe he is marching at last on Rome. But this time, his own body fails him. In camp, Mehmed collapses, gripping his chest, and his physicians rush to a man they cannot save. At 49, the conqueror is gone. Some whispered poison, perhaps by his own son. The march on Rome dies with him. The moment he dies, his empire nearly tears itself apart. His 2 sons turn on each other, and Ottoman fights Ottoman for their dead father's throne. Kem loses and flees to Mehmed's Christian enemies. For years, the conqueror's own son is passed around Europe as a royal hostage against his brother, but the state Mehmed built is too strong to fall. Bayezid holds the throne, and the empire only grows. Soon it stretches from Algeria to Persia. The city he took stays the Ottoman capital for nearly 500 years. Istanbul, the heart of an empire, exactly as the young sultan swore. His great church-turned mosque, Hagia Sophia, still towers over the skyline today, its dome the one he knelt beneath in the smoke of 1453. And the walls, his monstrous cannon shattered, still stand broken in places, the scars of the day the impossible city fell to a boy of 21. His law of fratricide, letting a sultan kill his brothers, would haunt the dynasty for generations, drowning the palace in the blood of princes. Yet in Turkey today, Mehmed is no villain but a hero. Fatih, the Conqueror, the young man who changed the shape of the world in a single morning. The Venetian portrait survives in London, that heavy-lidded gaze still watching across 5 centuries. Few conquerors were ever captured so alive, and historians still argue over that final march. Where was he really going in 1481? Against Rome, against Egypt, or somewhere he told no one? He had taken the city that stopped every army for 1,000 years. He ended the Roman Empire and dragged a fleet over mountains to do it. He killed his own brother in the cradle, executed his closest servants, and buried an age of the world, all before most men have even begun. From a frightened boy, mocked on a throne too big for him, to the man who broke Constantinople, Mehmed spent his life proving the doubters wrong. And he did. The laughter of that court was answered with the greatest conquest of the age, and a name that outlived everyone who sneered at the boy. He remade a captured city into one of the greatest capitals on earth, a place where East and West have met and clashed ever since. Every empire that touched this crossroads after him stood on the foundation that one relentless young sultan laid in blood and stone. Mehmed II died still reaching for more, on the road to a conquest the world never saw. His ambition was the only thing that ever stopped him. He was buried in the city he had taken, in the capital he had built, under the shadow of the dome he claimed the day the old world ended. For 1,000 years, they said it could never be taken. A boy of 21 proved them all wrong, and the world was never the same again. This was Mehmed the Conqueror. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more legendary stories from history's darkest and greatest figures.